Hey everyone, Justin here from EWC alongside my colleague Robert, and today we thought we'd try something a little bit different. We're going to do a little Q&A. I reached out on Instagram and asked you guys for some questions, and we got a whole lot of good ones. So Robert, you want to start us off?
So we got a lot of nice feedback from you guys. We appreciate that. We like to try and engage as much as we can. And we thought this would be a good way to go about it. So one of the first questions we got, that's one that we actually get quite a bit, so I think it does make sense to answer it here, is use a watch winder or wind them as I want to wear them. And it's something we get from a lot of people, especially people who own more complicated watches and things like that. They ask, should I put them on a winder? The short answer to that is no. We have seen what winders can do to watches because they actually put an awful lot of strain on your watch. And if you have something that's like an ultra-thin AP or a Blancpain or something like that, it can actually kind of shred the movement. So you'll hear things about how you need to keep the oils moving or everything's going to stodge up or something. And that may have been true 100 years ago, but it's not true anymore.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, like Robert said, it just puts unnecessary wear and tear on the movement. It's basically like if you left your car running in the driveway 24/7, even when you went home and parked it. You know, modern movements don't really require that much maintenance. A lot of times people complain, well, it's, I have a perpetual calendar and I want to keep it set or whatnot. And to be honest, most watches these days are pretty easy to set, and you probably should learn how to set it to begin with. So
to me, it's also part of that tactile experience of owning the watch, like winding it and setting it and playing with it and stuff. So I actually enjoy that part of ownership of the watch, of like interfacing with it. Whereas then if you just pull it off the winder and wear it, I mean, if you have something that's impossible to set, I have a customer who owned a Blancpain perpetual calendar with the Chinese zodiac on it. And I think the entire dial was in Chinese. And he was like, I keep that on a winder because I can't set it. And so I understand that.
Right.
That to me made sense. But I think outside of those rare occurrences.
Yeah, or like a Terra Luna or something like that.
Yeah, exactly, where your planetary positions and stuff, then sure.
Outside of that, though, we recommend against using winders. Next up, we got a question asking, what is the difference between the 3940 and the 5039? And why is the 5039 a bit ignored? And we totally agree. The 5039 is criminally underrated, absolutely incredible piece. You still get that, that Patek perpetual calendar. You get that additional, hobnail detailing on the case, the bezel.
Which I'm actually curious to see, like with Patek bringing back the hobnail. We have the hobnail now on the side of the case for the 5226.
Which I really like.
Which is really nicely done. We have the hobnail on the bezel of the 6119.
Yep.
So I wonder if we're going to start to actually see a bit of a flip here if that hobnail starts to make a resurgence. We could see the 5039 become more popular than the 3940.
I actually personally prefer the 5930.
Damn it, focus!
Sorry, the 5039 to the 3940. I really like that little added interest that the hobnail gives you. It's just, slightly unique, slightly different.
It's a different feel on the wrist, too, which is really interesting because of the straight lugs and the kind of more round case of the 5039 versus that Calatrava case on the 3940. If you have the opportunity to try them both and you're in the market for a Patek Perpetual, it would make sense to put them on the wrist because they wear completely different, even though they're only a millimeter apart by the calipers.
Yeah. All right, next up, Robert.
So, better to buy from a boutique or an AD?
No. It's better to buy from us.
What about us?
It's better to buy from us.
So I think this is also an interesting question because the landscape out there is changing. We are seeing that AD model change in a very drastic way as all of these brands start pulling out and going boutique only. So if you had asked this question about 5 years ago, we would say, well, the boutique, you might get better service. Sometimes you get an extra year warranty, but you're paying full clip. Whereas in AD, you might get a discount and you might form a relationship with somebody who sells a lot of brands. But now this is almost a moot point.
Right.
You're seeing ADs shift more towards independence. You're seeing ADs.
Like Cellini at this point is
exactly.
Really
they're leaning hard into Ferrier, MB&F. And, we're seeing a completely different model. So I think most of these major brands, within a couple of years, it's going to be boutique only. That's going to be the only option.
Yeah.
And then the ADs will carry the smaller independents and things like that you won't find, if you're looking for an IWC or a Jaeger or Vacheron Paddock, et cetera.
Right. And I think honestly too, like we've talked about, as the industry, has kind of brands are under the large umbrellas of a few major corporations at this point, conglomerates, whatnot. Those brands are even opening up, like we're seeing potentially here in Boston. Some stores, some retail locations that actually, are run by the Richemont, whatever the conglomerate might be, LVMH, that is actually selling all of their brands under one roof.
Right.
So it's almost like an AD or, a big boutique with all the brands. So it's kind of a weird changing landscape at this point, but you're right, ADs are really going away.
Yeah, I think it ultimately makes more sense too. I think in terms of if you're buying that new watch and that's the angle that you're pursuing, that model makes more sense in terms of the brands giving the right service to the customer.
Yeah.
But then if you want the best service, you just come here.
Next question, Longa or Paddock? Yes.
Yeah.
Feeling saucy. I think I'm gonna buy it. Do you accept cash?
So, do you think it's better value to trade or sell than buy the next piece? Obviously, being in the situation that we are going to advocate for the trade.
Yep.
And I think there's a couple of benefits for the trade versus selling on your own and then buying on your own. It is, consolidating everything into one transaction. In many cases, there are some financial benefits there to maybe moving less money around and instead paying partially with a watch versus, getting money into your account, taking money, sending that to another account kind of thing. And ultimately, I think as collectors, as we refine our collections, you're always going to end up with pieces where you're just not wearing them anymore. And it always makes more sense. I think you're going to get the most value out of that when you're trading it to somebody like us who's interested in that piece, because we're also trying to curate an inventory from the wonderful pieces that you guys already own.
I mean, we can always, offer a little bit better value in trade than we can to buy for that exact reason, because we're interested, if we have one piece going out the door, it makes more sense for us financially, to have another piece coming back in. So we can always give a little bit better value. And I think that's pretty common, for other, other watch retailers like ourselves. There is that added financial, incentive from our end to do a little bit better on that trade piece as well. Next up, best Daytona market buy. This person asked, is it the 116520?
Which is the Rolex movement with the steel bezel, for those of you playing the home game.
And that is a good buy. I really think anything two-tone right now.
Two-tone's the best
Daytona.
value. Like, if we're talking the best absolute value, I think two-tone for sure.
Oh, yeah. So that's how I read it. I read it as more, what is the best value right now? And we could, we could go on for 30 minutes of what the best Daytona to buy is,
Yeah, for me, it would be Zenith.
You think that's the best value right now?
I think Zenith poses more value because if you look at the prices of Zenith Daytonas and you compare them to like the modern Daytonas, they're not that far apart.
True.
And I feel like the Zenith Daytona should be worth more because there's a finite quantity of those. And within that finite quantity, there's even less that are in nice condition and maybe that are complete with box and paper. So to get a nice Zenith Daytona, good condition, full kit, like that's a bank watch.
Definitely.
That's something that but you can wear it still because it's not a fragile watch either. So it's like, that to me would be where I would go.
And honestly, too, Daytonas at this point, I mean, they've come down so dramatically from where they were, a year ago, say. So, I mean, no matter what Daytona you like, no matter what Daytona you're into, whether it's, all the way from, the top of the line Playtona, all the way down to, just a standard ceramic one, like values have, or prices have really come down. So they are a good buy right now, I'd say.
Yeah, everything feels much better.
Next up.
This is another one of those questions that we probably field at least once a day here in one form or another. And this is, are watches an investment? Why or why not?
This is a philosophical question as much as
It is philosophical, exactly, because everybody comes to this hobby of watches from a different perspective.
Sure.
Right? There's guys like you and I who only own stuff that we wear.
Right.
Right? Like if I'm going to own a watch, it's because I'm going to wear it. And I want that. For me, the joy of ownership comes from wearing the piece and living my life in the piece.
Right.
We have customers, we have friends who have a different slant where their joy of ownership is simply owning the thing.
Yep. And knowing that they own it.
Right. And they don't have to wear it or they don't choose to wear it. And that's fine. That's okay. And then we have other people where instead of taking the joy from the actual watch, to them, it's almost the game of moving stuff around and like playing with the collection and almost managing it like a portfolio.
But man, fundamentally, don't buy watches that you don't like, or don't buy watches solely for the reason that you think you can make money on them. Because if something happens and if the market turns and you no longer can make money on it, I don't know, it just ruins the whole experience. It ruins...
Well, it's not a hobby anymore. It's like guys who play poker for a living.
Sure.
At that point, it's not a game. It's your job.
Well, but also, like, it's a tough comparison because, when I invest in stocks, I'm not buying companies, or I'm not buying stocks that, I love the company. You know what I'm saying? I love the person that's running the company. It's, you buy it because fundamentally the stock is sound. The business is sound.
It's a business decision.
It's a business decision as opposed to an emotional decision. And I think, kind of like you said, we approach watch collecting and the whole, the watch hobby from a very emotional place, as opposed to a more, just a more dollars and cents kind of.
You could also make the argument too that the investment level of watches is a different game, right? Like if you're buying a Steel 1518 or you're buying like a perfect 2499, that's a different kind of collecting. That's a different kind of collector. You're probably not going to make that your daily wearer, and that's a very different kind of strata within the watch world. And at that point, it probably is an investment, because if you have a perfect 2499. Barring some catastrophic apocalypse, that probably will always be money in the bank.
Man, I think if we find ourselves in a nuclear winter in 30 years or something, I think that 2499 is still going to be valuable.
Exactly.
It'll be, I don't know, you'll trade it for, I don't even know.
Water.
Yeah, exactly. And final question for this round. Like I said, we're hoping to do a bunch more of these. We really appreciate all the questions. But last one. What is the best sub 20K piece at European Watch Company currently? Rob and I were actually just looking kind of at what is available in that sub 20K range, and we have a lot of really good stuff in there.
Yeah, spoiled for choice.
Yeah. Tons of variety, from, vintage to modern to, just a lot of really good stuff. I'm going to go with...
I want to say something. I want to put it out there. If you like it, you can take it. If you don't, send it right back.
I'm going to be biased, and I'm actually going to go with a watch that was formerly in my collection, the Omega Speedy Moon. It's the reference 345.089, I believe.
0809?
0809, thank you. Yeah, I only owned the watch for several years. Super interesting. They made roughly 1,300 of them in the late 80s. Just a really, interesting, again, in the world of Speedmasters, there are so many variants, there's so many little wrinkles and, interesting, funky ways you can go. This one's super cool.
If you're nuts like we are.
Right, exactly.
It's a completely different watch from the modern one that we made.
Totally.
In my opinion, a Speedmaster with a sapphire crystal is a very different watch. It doesn't have the same feel.
No,
it doesn't have the same sauce like that plastic crystal does. So having the plastic crystal on it makes a big difference.
Yep.
And then they put these little decorative rings around the subdials on the modern one that, to me, again, it takes away from that original kind of Speedmaster feel. It tries to make it a little bit fancier or something, and it doesn't work. So
and this one's full set, which is super cool. Original box, original papers, an extract from the Omega archive. So
and it's a rare bird. They don't come up.
I mean, everything is rare is a relative term when it comes to Omega, especially, and when it comes to Omega Speedmasters, but this one actually is rare, and it is very interesting. So that's going to be my pick.
Yeah, no, I like that. I struggled with this because there are There are a lot of things that I think are really good right now. So to my Zenith Daytona point, in terms of like that vintage and what some people call like the neo vintage market, which is like kind of things from the late 80s into the 90s there, I think there's a lot of fantastic things there.
Yeah.
But being the kind of dress watch guy that I am, I'm going to go back to Breguet.
Wow.
And we've got a couple of those like Breguet automatic and manual wine pieces. We've got
Classique,
like the 5177, which is an automatic with an enamel dial. And the signature Breguet numerals that everybody loves on paddocks, but for some reason you put it in a Breguet. I don't know. But yeah, so an enamel dial, an in-house automatic movement, the blued hands, perfect proportions, like that's a stunner under 20K, in my opinion. Because you look at Calatravas, you look at most Longas within that price point. Your precious metal for precious metal.
They're much more basic. You get a lot more interest with the Breguet than you would, like you're saying, in a comparable Longa.
Yeah, like there's a lot of value.
They're gorgeous.
Because the comparable paddock is like a 5196 with a closed case back and a plain silver dial, which is an elegant, lovely watch in its own respect. But in my opinion, if I'm buying that, and I look at the Breguet, it's like, man, there's more there.
I mean, like you said, you get that coin edge detail on the case. You get an enamel dial. You get the gorgeous Breguet style hand. The hands and everything, the blue steel hands. Like just that's a ton of watch for the money. A ton.
Yeah. So I'm beating a dead horse a little bit with Breguet, but I think there's a lot of value to be had there.
Like we said, we really enjoyed this. Thank you guys so much for submitting questions.
And good questions, too.
Yeah, really good questions.
There were a lot also. Yeah. This was not all we got. We got a lot. If we didn't read your questions, we apologize.
We got a lot.
And we probably have marked it for the next one.
Yeah.
But we will be asking for more as well, because we're always curious as to what you guys are curious about.
Yeah. So thank you very much. Looking forward to the next one, and we'll see you guys soon.